Okay, import a sketch, then go image adjustments, levels, and so now because I've adjusted that level, by shifting this one in, it's going to make it even whiter. Okay, but now all of the levels have gone to the white, the light side of it. We could bring that in a little bit, but it's not really going to make a huge difference. So play around with this to try and get rid of your background. I've got an issue here because I don't know, it has some flash or something. I took a photograph of this, so this is really bad quality. Okay, but there's some issue here. I could maybe try and get rid of that. Oops. Again, by image adjustments. If I made that black and white, so if I make that black and white, so I'm starting to lose some of that, and I could go back in levels maybe to try and just take a little bit more out of that. So you can see that I can just play around with it to get from something really dirty to something that's not too bad. And then what I'd probably do is take a rubber. And it's on. Oh, sorry. So the image. I don't know if you ever come across this. If you've got this little square, it's because it's kind of linked to the image. So if you right-click, you can rasterize layer. Where's that? Rasterize layer. If you rasterize that layer, it kind of brings it into Photoshop, so you can edit it. So then I might take a rubber with a really big rubber, a bit soft, and kind of just tidy those edges, maybe if I wanted to, depending on what I want to do. So again, if I kind of tap around in the edge, you can see I've cleaned up that sketch quite a bit. Now obviously we could just zoom in with our rubber, small size, and start to tidy up all these rubbish lines where I went wrong. Yeah, and we can get rid of all these duplicates and stuff if we want to, and it's we can do that. However, what I'd probably suggest is actually if you make that kind of quite small now, apply that, and I do a better job of rubbing that out, and we had a whole range of these on the page. Actually, it's not going to look too bad, even just a little bit of tidying would look quite good. But what would be better is actually to really stroke these lines in Illustrator, so we can get some nice crisp line work. So if I just drag this into Illustrator, I need to accept that first. So I've changed something. So if we drag this into Illustrator, here it comes in. How familiar are you guys with Illustrator? Reasonably. Okay, so are you familiar with the pen tool? Yeah. Yeah, and for making curves. So basically, I could then stroke this. So basically, click, hold, drag, reset. Until I've got, you can see a colour. So I could go over my design. Oh, actually, just a second, I'm not done. Do quite that.
Is the pen tool better to go around it than the curve tool?
You mean this one?
Yeah, that's the one I often.
They're kind of interchangeable, really.
Is it better? Is the pen tool better?
I typically use it, but that's maybe because I was always brought up using that one before the curve tool. Yeah, before the curve tool came in, that's like a relatively.
With the pen tool.
Yeah.
If you've got a straight line and you bring a pencil up to it, sometimes it just links to it.
Yeah.
And it drives me because then it just makes the whole thing curve.
Yeah, curve tool.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So with the
they
pen.
kind of intersect and then they just join as one line.
Yeah.
Stop it doing that.
So with the pen tool, you click your start location. If you want a straight line, obviously just click your end location.
Yeah.
If you want a curved line, you click and hold with that left mouse to get the curve.
And then how do you get off that?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So this is a drag handle. Okay. And so the curve is tangent to that drag handle. This point is tangent. Yeah. At this point. Okay. So if obviously it's now leading into another curve because it's tangent on this bottom handle. However, if you want to go, so you can go straight. So you've got a couple of options up here. I just do another one. Okay, so for example, I'm going here and I don't want that curve there. To get back, if you click back the center of it, you get then a straight line coming off it. So single click for a straight line, click and hold for a curve. Yeah. If you don't want that curve at tangency, you click back in the middle to get the next one. And again, you could put another curve in, but you could put it going like this way to get a kind of a wave type effect. Okay.
They're trying to join it up.
So
They're
what?
back. Yeah.
So what you've got is in Illustrator, you've got two mice. You've got effectively the black mouse and the white mouse. So the black one is selecting everything. Yeah. The white mouse is a direct selector. So if I use the white mouse and I click on that curve, it brings up all of those points that I've created. I can, if I click on a point, I can drag that around. Yeah. I can then drag a handle and I can twist a handle. I can move these handles in and out because it's all based on tangency. Okay, so at that point, this line is tangent to that line at that point there. Yeah. If I want that to be a sharp edge, I can actually just drag that handle into the center to then get rid of that tangency. Yeah. Conversely, if I want that to be a curve at the top here, you've got an option to convert that point into a smooth curve. So if I click that one, I will then create that as a smooth curve, and I then have two handles. Yeah? Okay, so what I would probably do is I'd probably then sketch over this, and I like this back line here, I'd probably extend it a bit longer, just shooting off the end there or something like that. Okay.
Why does it go like white underneath?
So it's going white because at the moment I've got a stroke colour of black, but there's also a fill of white, yeah. So I could get rid of that, so I can just turn off my fill colour. Yeah. Now by default, the stroke is just kind of a square section stroke, that basic uniform stroke. If I click on this, drop down, and you can get that one to kind of get a nicer stroke, yeah. Okay, so I could go around all of it, something like this, what I did earlier, and basically you can see what I've done is I've just made, I've basically just stroked all of these lines. This one here, I drew that first one, I copied and pasted it, I made it a bit smaller to stick it in the inside, really simply. These ones, okay, I didn't spend very long, so they're a bit dodgy, like this is a bit dodgy, One thing though that's really important to think about is highlights and fillets, because that makes things look more realistic. So every product you see, the edge will always have a fillet, So if you think about an injection molding machine, it never has a sharp corner, does it? Yeah. So always include things like fillets, even if they're really small, because that's where your highlights are going to be. Yeah. Okay, my stroke was I was kind of playing around. I was kind of happy enough with this, but these are a bit rough, really. But anyway, something like this is kind of starting to look a bit better. So we took a bit of a manky sketch, really. We cleaned it up a little bit. This would be fine if we stuck it in the corner with a few other ones, that would be absolutely fine. I'm happy enough with that. But for the kind of more slightly presentation sketches, we kind of want to get to this level.
From that one to this one, did you rub out all the bits that you didn't want?
So I just traced over the top of it, basically.
Oh, then okay.
So basically, I did it like this. Okay, so I drew a few lines, like this one here, whatever, and so on. Drew all my lines out of that fill colour, and then I took this one and I just got rid of it. Does that make sense? So you just get rid of it, and then you're just left with the lines that you want, yeah. And those clean lines then end up looking something if you spend a bit of time doing something like that, yeah. So kind of key things as well is think about the outside line should always be thicker than the internal lines.
Yeah.
So obviously these have a thicker line weight. I've tried to put a little bit of a shadow gap here because I'm expecting that there's going to be a tiny gap between the two materials. As they join, this is going to be some grit, and that's going to be something else. And I've got a tiny bit of a bevel on that. It's a little bit rough, yeah. But we've got kind of a bit of a shadow gap.
Do you know?
Yeah.
Sorry to interrupt. So this area is lighter.
This bit here, yeah.
Do you, when you draw the lines, do you draw them so they start on the lighter side, so you can then reverse the thickness when you?
Yeah, it's a bit of a faff. I don't normally bother doing that.
Do you know what I mean?
I do know what you mean, yeah. Because if you wanted the dark lines over here, how would you change?
Think about that when you draw it.
Not normally, but I probably should.
Do you start from sort of this corner here?
That is where I did start.
And
Yeah,
then you just draw it round,
and then
and
draw it round this.
maybe a separate line on that.
Yeah. So I guess you could. What would be the best? You wouldn't. You could have a little bit more.
Yeah, you turn to the corner and
You might have to make it up of a couple of lines actually.
Yeah,
Or,
I suppose it's trial and error as to where
Yeah.
there are no batteries on.
So you can adjust.
Oh yeah, I thought, oh no, 20%. Let's see if we can. I was wondering why I dimmed. If it gets to 10%, I'll go and plug it. Yeah, I know what you mean though. It's a bit of a.
Because it looks good at the moment, but I was wondering if you thought about that before.
I didn't actually think about that, but I did want my highlight to be here. Because this is going to be my highlight basically, and then this is going to be in shadow. Okay, so this is flexible, right? Okay, so what do we do? So we bring that back into Photoshop. So obviously I have to save that, but I can literally just drag that back into Photoshop like this.
So that's like, does that kind of like bring it in as vector graphics, or does it
Yep,
convert it?
exactly. So that's vector. So you see down here, it's a vector smart
Oh,
object. So it maintains its vector format. Yeah.
Because what I've done is I've always saved this, for example. I just draw that as a sort of PNG and then draw it over as a
okay.
PNG. I never knew you can like sort of drag it.
You can just drag. Yeah, you can just drag stuff interchangeably between Adobe
That's
stuff.
so
yeah.
useful.
So it's kept its vector thing. It's it's effectively a PNG. You know, it's in like it's fully transparent, etc. You can see through the layers. Okay, so once I've got it in here, then what I'll probably do is start looking at some materials. So I looked at some texture thing. I'm going to do stainless steel because it's a nice easy one.
So many tabs. So
My OCD.
I did, oh yeah. Okay, so to get a kind of a good rendering, what you really want to do is you want to mix real life materials and kind of obviously shading. You know, so I'm going to grab some stainless steel. I'll probably use that.
those pictures that you'll, like the material ones,
Yeah.
would you try and get the best quality one you can?
I'll try and get a good one. Yeah. But it won't make a huge difference. Yeah, you get a reason. Yeah, get a reasonable. Okay, so there's a couple of things I could do, but the first thing I want to do is in Photoshop is I want to set up my paths. So we've set up these paths in Illustrator. If I go to my pen tool, I've got a pen tool in Photoshop as well. Yeah, and this pen tool is basically the same as the Illustrator pen tool. The only difference is that when selecting the middle bit, you have to hold down Alt to reselect that middle bit. Okay. So I'm going to use my pen tool to outline this thing. Actually, I'm just going to let's just do the. Okay, I'll do what I'm going to do. I'm going to just do the top surface. For now, something like that. There. Okay, so once I've got a path, if you look, you've got your layers and you've got the path tab down here, and I've got my work path. I'm going to create a new one so I don't accidentally overwrite the one I've just created, so it's always there. What I can now do is, that's kind of saved as a path, and I can use that as a selection at any time. So, for example, if I create a new layer, I could go, let's just choose a colour, and let's just do a gradient field. Right, so I could put a bit of a gradient in, thinking what I want to do. It's a bit of a primary school colour, isn't it? Okay, but something like this, that'd be fine. Go onto my path, right click that, make selection, okay. That's selected that area. Now I could just do an invert and delete, but I might want to come back, or I might want to change something, or my path might not be 100% right. So have you ever used these layer masks before?
I get confused with the layers.
Okay, so we've got our layer 2 here. I'm selecting layer 2, this gradient layer. I've clicked on the path, I've right clicked to make that a selection, and if I go back to layers, down here I can click this button and it makes a layer mask. Okay, so it crops my layer just so that to that bit there. Now the advantage of doing this is that I can edit, I could go back in, so say for example I wanted some shadow on this layer, brush on this, so I could go back in and I could really down. You know, I could go back in, I could put some shadow in, and you see it's not bleeding out of my layer because it's been masked there. Also, if you look at the layer mask, I need to have to undo this to get it back. Okay, so if I'm selected now on my layer, but if I select my layer mask, you see it's black and white. If I then draw in black and white, I'm on white, so white is visible. So you see, I paste it back up again. You see that I'm now exposing. If you look at my layer mask, I've got this little dot there, so I'm now exposing some more of it. So if I made a bad job of doing that, which I did because I did it really quickly, you know, I could go back in and I could just add that little bit in. I could say, oh, actually, or if my sketch changes or my design changes slightly, I can go back in my layer mask and just reveal a little bit more or a little bit less, just using black and white. Does that make sense, everybody?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. Yes.
That's
No.
kind of gave up. So that obviously that mask is always there, and then
Yeah,
how do
let's
you
just-
how
let's
do you get
just-
the colours back?
Let's just.
while using the black.
Okay, so. Okay, so actually, let's just get rid of that because that looks a bit of a mess. Okay, so say I wanted some stainless steel on this. What would I do? Again, it's really good to try and use as many materials as possible. If I right-click on the corner, have you used distort before?
Yeah.
Okay, so bring in an image, right-click on the corner, click distort. Gives you this white mouse, and you get to drag this over your surface. So I can drag this over my surface because I kind of want it to map to my surface, something like that, roughly. But it's a bit flat, isn't it? It's not quite what I want yet. So up here at the top is an option for basically splitting it into a grid. And when you split it into a grid, you can then bulge this out. And you can take the... Oops. For some reason my drag handles are inverted. I don't know. My drag handles are going a bit weird. See that? Okay, but anyway, you can... I don't know why my drag handles are all gone basically inverted there, but you can manipulate that a little bit more and accept that. So there we go, we've got this nice thing here. Again, I want to crop this, so I go paths, work path, right click, make selection, okay, layers, click on that layer with my stainless steel effect, click at the bottom, create that layer mask. Okay, and then we're starting to create these masks that help. I might just drag my vector on the top so it kind of makes it look a little bit better, and then on this I might add a new layer in now maybe for my shadow, and I might put in a bit of shadow. Yeah. Down. You know, I might put a little bit of shadow in here or something. So kind of play around with that. Yeah. I might add in some highlights over this side, something like that. Yeah, so you can play around. Keep the. I'd always recommend keeping highlights and shadows on a separate layer than your material, obviously, so we can go back and change it. Again, same as before. Paths, right-click, make selection. Okay. Layer mask on our shadows, so we should crop those back. So by creating these layer masks, these paths to start with, it means that I can keep going back and changing stuff, you know, all the time. The next thing that is kind of key is when we're actually creating highlights. Okay, so if we look at this one. Okay, let's actually just roll back a bit in this one. So this is made up. Oh, actually no, that was compressed.
How long did it take you to make this?
Just like 40 minutes. It was between when I left you guys and now.
Oh, okay.
Because I thought, I haven't done it. Oh, no. Oh yeah, I think I started in green. I didn't really like green. Okay, so for this one, what I did, and it's still rough, there's still loads of bits I don't like about it, but if you look at my paths, I end up creating maybe I should go loads of paths. Okay, so I've got a path for the top, I've got a path for the sides. Oh, I think I moved the image at some point, but I've got lots of paths. Yeah, so all of this, I made a path for everything. Yeah. Which meant that when I was working, it was really quick and easy just to flick back to the.
Would you say that's the best thing to do?
Yeah, because it just means, so if you look at my like this one, this layer here is some shadow on that, okay?
Okay.
And you can see, actually, if you look at my layer, it's just a mess. It's a big gradient, but then I've just isolated that little bit that I want. So it's made it so much easier. This one here. The key is all in these highlights. Okay, this is the real key, is making sure we get really strong definition between the highlights and the shadows. And one really nice way of doing that is if we grab a path again. Say I was going to put a highlight down the middle. Obviously I wouldn't do that, but just as an example, path 9. What we can do is we can grab a brush. So I'm just making a new layer. Okay, grab a brush. Turn your paste up. Make it small. Make it quite hard, and make it white. Yeah. On my paths, if I've selected a layer at the bottom here, I can stroke that. Oh, sorry, go back on brush. If I'm selected on the brush and I'm selected on the path, yep, I can stroke that line there. Okay, that gives me a nice smooth line in Photoshop. Then what I do is I go filter, oops, sorry, on that layer. If you go filter, blur, and blur that, let's just see what it looks about. Okay, so I'm going to blur my line, something like that. Okay. This is how I created some of these shadows, a little bit rough. And then do that again, so then you do a new layer, paths, but this time flip that round, have it black, make it just a tiny bit smaller, and stroke that one in black. Do the same. Layer, filter, blur, blur. A tiny bit less blur on this one. Okay, do. And then offset this layer. Okay, so what you want to do is you want to, and then I'm going to reduce that down a little bit. Not too much. But basically, you can build up really nice shadow lines by having the combination of the black next to the white to get those highlights and shadow. Now that's quite a bad example, but hopefully you can kind of see the idea of getting these split lines and things is a combination. And if you blur them slightly, and you get this black one over the white one, then you get the highlights and the shadows. How would you do something like that? And again, that's exactly the same idea. So this one, what I did is I got a white brush, yeah. And I just drew something like, it was literally just like that, that's all I did. I made a blob, filter, blur, and I blurred it quite a lot. Too much though. I blurred it to something like that basically. So I blurred it, something like that. Yeah?
Just put it in the middle.
And then I just stuck it in the middle, yeah. So that adds a lot. You know, so basically I've got, that's basically almost a rubber line. They're quite crisp. Another thing to think about is having really crisp and sharp highlights and reflections, you know. They're quite defined. They're not wishy-washy. These ones are really quite defined. And then I've just added on this blurred blob at the end. And I added on there, maybe a bit overkill. I realised afterwards that because my light source is coming from here, kind of, so that would be highlighted, and then I realised afterwards, oh, it should be highlighted down there as well, because we've got highlight up here, so we need to mirror that down there, if that makes sense. So maybe I shouldn't have put such a highlight on there. So what I did is actually, if I hide that one, when I put it, I then added it in a bit later on, you know. I then looked at the, yeah, so what else did I do? So,
Shadow.
oh yeah, that's what this. So that was the final thing I added in. So I knew that my light source was coming from this way. Yeah. So it's going to send a shadow out that way. I put a tiny bit of shadow on here. Can I group all this together? Yeah. So what I did. Another thing I did, this is another little trick, is, okay, so once, let's just turn up that one, okay, so once I'd finished, I kind of said, okay, that's fine, so I grouped all my layers together into a group, so select all the layers, yeah, right click, group from layers. Yeah. I'm just going to duplicate that group. Duplicate group. And hide that one. Okay. So I've got this group. Then I right click, and if you merge the group, it merges it all into one. Okay, so what I did is I put everything into a group, yeah, merged that group together so I get one single image, and then I distorted it because I thought to myself, actually, the perspective's a bit out still. So I can then twist this to make the perspective just a little bit better than it actually was initially. So I realised that some of those lines look a bit wrong, so let's bring that back in a bit. I can then right click and go to perspective as well on that list. And perspective will just bring, so I can bring those back in a little bit to just get the perspective a little bit better. Okay, maybe I didn't tweak about it, but you get the idea. Is actually you can do a lot. You can twist a lot of stuff around. Okay, for the shadow, all I did was I just created a new layer, got a brush, made it black, turned on the opacity, and I knew that there wasn't going to be very much here. So I kind of say, if you hold down Shift, you get a straight line. Is it Shift or Control? I think it's Shift. If you hold down Shift, you get a straight line. So basically, I just kind of blocked out roughly what I thought the shadow would be. So I knew I was going from here, and my light source over here. So I think I went something like over here to there, and then back. Okay, so maybe that's not quite as good as my last one. But anyway, then I just got a brush, 100% opacity. Actually, that's what I did. So I did it in 100%, and I turned it down here. So I just did it really quickly, and then to get that shadow. So there we go. Okay, so there we go. That's quite. So everything is relatively simple. So this gradient here, I did as a gradient across, masked it, put in some highlights and shadow. Texture, I warped that texture. I then copied and pasted it, flipped it, and also changed the colour. Have you guys changed colour of stuff? So if I take this, this layer here, go image, adjustments, hue, saturation, you can change the hue, which changes basically the whole colour of the thing. So we can just make it orange, for example, now. So, yeah. So very quickly, so really, it's quite nice, because remember what we started with? We started with that, a bit horrible, and we end with that, which is a bit better, you know. We kind of went through a few stages in between. But you could... A bit better. So, yeah. Okay, so that's kind of... I think this half an hour... I think what I'll do is I'll re-record this a bit better, because I'll do a little bit better step by step.